Hi again then guys, and welcome to another installment of Beards and Cars. This is of course my podcast layout of a series, longer format, more in-depth discussions, countdowns, predictions, generally speaking in the world of Gran Turismo, sometimes outside of it as well. And for this episode, I wanted to actually, considering all the stuff that's happened in the week with the update etc, and also with even more leaks happening such as Goodwood, to follow on from last week's episode, because last week's episode we talked about leaks. Are leaks in gaming a good thing or can they be a bad thing, etc. And of course check out that episode if you haven't already. Following on from that, with, as I said, the week that's just passed, I think it's a discussion which actually needs to be brought up again. But not in the same way. I think that the aspect of the discussion that is worth talking about is, are these leaks deliberate? Because a lot of people I've noticed in messages to me, in comments on the channel, etc., are starting to think that maybe Polyphony is releasing these little leaks, the first of which, in terms of just a pure leak, happened, you could say, last month or a few weeks ago, when the Porsche 962, the A86, etc. were accidentally, or so we thought at the time, seen on the Gran Turismo website under the different liveries when you select the country, then select the manufacturer, then select the car. We assumed, as you would, that that was just an accident, a pure, legitimate leak. But then, it's happened again. In the exact same way, it's happened with a track instead of with cars. It happened with Goodwood this time. Now, I'm going to say that this is not a cut and dried question, because you could think, well, those kind of leaks don't just happen that regularly now, so there's got to be something deliberate in there. That is a fair point, and I'm not going to dismiss that. But the thing that I will bring up as a counterpoint to that logic is, look at how bad the recent update was in terms of how buggy and laggy it made the game. So Polyphony clearly makes mistakes, because just look at what that update did, and I'm still experiencing server issues in the game even now. So I will say that that alone is a pretty strong counter-argument to the fact that, yes, they clearly do just get things wrong sometimes. So they could be getting it wrong, and getting something wrong back-to-back is less likely, but it's not impossible. That could be a genuine mistake. I would think, and I again alluded to this last week, that if it is a mistake, it is still a beneficial one, because it increases the hype for the game. And we can see that even here on the channel, the kind of excitement that people have on these videos that I drop about stuff like the Lamborghini Espada, the leaks of the Porsche 962 and the others, the leaks of Goodwood, etc. It gets people more excited and more interested. It even brings some people back, at least for a few days, to the game to try out these new things, and then they might continue playing, they might not. So even if it isn't deliberate, as I said last week and it hasn't changed, it is beneficial either way. It's very good business. Now the only question is it deliberate business or is it incidental? Because there's a big difference between the two. Now if Polyphony is choosing to leak these things, I think that doesn't make a huge amount of sense. That's not to say that they're not doing it, but if you think about the logic of that scenario, why would you leak something if you're going to release teaser silhouettes and a teaser trailer before the update itself drops every month anyway? That's kind of like teasing something 3 times when you're already teasing it twice anyway, with Kaz's silhouettes on Twitter, then the trailers on YouTube. It seems kind of redundant to have that third level. Now I will say the main advantage of it is that it gets people hyped earlier, and that is a good advantage to have. It means that you get people hyped 3 times a month instead of just twice. Again, that's a good advantage from a business point of view, and from the point of view of trying to get people to enjoy the game as much as possible. But again, that doesn't incline me personally to believe that it is deliberate. So my overall thoughts, I would say, are that no, I actually don't think that Polyphony is doing it deliberately. They could be, but I don't think so, because if they weren't putting out trailers, and especially if they weren't putting out those teaser silhouettes, the whole point of which is to kind of, in effect, be a controlled leak of what the cars are going to be, it's just redundant. It seems pointless to do a third layer, ultimately, especially when all of the other channels that they do it through are official. Sometimes you'll see a car in the Nations Cup when we haven't had news about it yet, like the Subaru 22B or the Maserati Gran Turismo, or even more recently with the Countach and the 250 GT. Other times, you'll see the silhouettes, and then you'll see the trailers. So in effect, it's not even what I said. The Nations Cup is like the third level of redundancy already. So in effect, what we're saying is if we are to believe that Polyphony is legitimately and deliberately leaking these things, that is a fourth level of redundancy that they're using. We've got the trailers, the silhouettes, the Nations Cup leaks, not really leaks, but you know what I mean, and these legitimate online leaks. That seems like a lot of work to go to just to leak something a fourth time. So I honestly don't think that Polyphony is doing it deliberately. I think it is a double genuine mistake. Because for me personally, even in real life or in a game, I can only speak to my own experience, of course, but when I make a mistake, I will often make another mistake almost back to back because it throws me off my game. So I'm not saying that that has happened to Polyphony, but it is the kind of thing that can happen. People aren't perfect. They make mistakes. So I do believe that it's happened twice as a mistake. Now, if it happens a third time, especially in quick succession, then that will be enough evidence for me to reconsider my argument, for sure. It won't completely sway me the other way, but it will certainly be less believable if it starts happening every month or every few weeks. Because if you think about it, it wasn't happening at all before. Now that it's happening, it's starting to happen more frequently. So again, it could be considered evidence. And that's the interesting thing I think about this discussion. I could fully understand both sides of this argument. If you're down in the comments saying, I do believe it's deliberate, I can understand that. If you're down in the comments saying, I think it's a genuine mistake, I can understand that. And I think that's why this is a very interesting, even, conversation to have, because it's very rare in the gaming, in the racing, in the car world, whatever, where you can have an argument or a discussion where both sides are completely the opposite, and yet you can understand both simultaneously. And I think that this is that exact kind of discussion, because there are merits to both sides of the argument. As I said, regardless of if it's deliberate or a mistake, either way it's beneficial for the brand. And in a way, again, as I said last week with Deadpool and the leaks that happened there with the first movie, having that kind of thing happen even once is beneficial. So maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe the first one was a mistake, maybe even the second one was a mistake. But then when they notice the kind of hype and the kind of excitement that it has, you could then begin to do it yourself. So it could even be a combination of both things, mistakes and deliberate ones later on. Because if you think about it, in the, 6, 9, 10 months, whatever, after the game first came out, with all of those updates, 9, 10, 12 cars in a pack, the good old days, as many people think, we didn't see any leaks. We had the silhouettes and we had the trailers. That was it. There were no leaks. If I recall correctly, there was no Nations Cup stuff for a long time after the game came out, not to the level that it is now at least. And then when we started really getting into the swing of the Nations Cup, that's when we started to see those cars, such as the Subaru and the Maserati, ahead of time. And that was October, November 2018, something like that. And then since then, pretty much consistently every month, we've started to see these small teasers and Nations Cup previews of cars and leaks, and it's more and more. The frequency is increasing of this kind of stuff. Just consider recently on the channel, we had the Espada leaked, or not leaked, we had the Espada behind the scenes stuff shown. We had the Civic, the Time Attack Civic, which I'm going to do a standalone video on for those who aren't aware of that news. We had Goodwood this week even leaked. We had the 1.38 selection of vehicles was leaked a couple of weeks ago. That's 4 immediately. So it's happening more often. It's happening more frequently. So to me, it does add merit to the argument of it being deliberate. Either way, it's very difficult to say without actually working for Polyphony, because obviously if you're there, then you'd hear stuff, you'd hear them talking, you'd hear more about it. But as far as I'm concerned, if I was Kaz, for instance, I wouldn't encourage my employees to leak stuff, but I probably wouldn't warn them against it either. Don't make it official company policy to leak news, but it is beneficial. So if it happens, it happens. That would be the kind of attitude that I would have. So whatever attitude he has, we can't say. What we do know, though, is that he is fully invested in teasing the cars and the stuff that happens in the game before it happens. A lot of the stuff on his Twitter is releasing those silhouettes and sharing the trailer and sharing stuff from the Nations Cup finalists. He is invested in it. He loves the game. He loves the updates that happen to the game. He loves teasing it and getting people excited. So again, even he, regardless of if it's deliberate or not, doubtless he can see, I mean, he's not a stupid guy. Look at what he's accomplished with Gran Turismo as the director. He can see the kind of hype that these leaks, legitimate or otherwise, have caused. So who knows? We may continue to see more. I mean, doubtless you'll see more. It's more so what kind of frequency could we be expecting? Will we see more of those Goodwood, Lamborghini Espada 1.38 style leaks, or will they get smaller? Will they tighten up the faucet to stop those leaks happening so much, or will they just allow it to continue? That, to me, as long as, or as well as what I said earlier, will be a strong indicator as to whether or not Polyphony likes this happening, or whether they really want to clamp down on it. Because, as I mentioned last week, if it's not spoiling a story, then who cares about a leak? It's not like you're ruining something. You're increasing hype. It only has benefit for the community. Whereas, you know, if Gran Turismo had a story and somebody spoiled the ending, that would be completely different. It's not like that. So, those are my thoughts. Even I, as I said, am not fully decided either way, but it's a very interesting discussion to have, and I would say that now more so than ever before, it's a legitimate discussion to have. Because these leaks are happening more often, they are becoming more significant, and, most importantly of all, they are increasing people's excitement for the game. So, that's it for my thoughts. Of course, I'd love to hear yours down below, and of course stick around next week for another episode. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.